Good day to you, partner. I'm Guy, and I can already tell that I'll be your best friend in this forsaken camp.
Hey guys, Wheat Solo here, aka the Skeleton King. I made one last video this beta about a build, and it's back to Bone Spear. And the build version you have on screen is thanks to Cloister. I never thought about running the spear on Boner. I have thought about using Skull Collector and things like that, but never the Uldyssian spear for energy shield, because you're going to be putting points into energy. Possibly. It's actually funny. When I play Boner Necro, I actually like to put points into Vite because I think your bone armor already provides so much damage absorb. You don't really need more bone armor. But by combining it with Energy Shield, I'm not sure you can die on this build. And so I just threw a Merc together, and yes, some of his gear is complete crap, very far from optimal. But I just thought that the key components are there, which is the Doom, Innocence, Exile, and Ferocity. It just makes you even more tanky. And then I've got Bone Armor with 200% ED. I've got the Energy Shield, and I've got Max Energy Bone Armor. And what's funny is I don't even think Bone Armor is basically worth casting anymore on this build, because you're so tanky. It's like a waste of a cast. You just don't take damage anymore. And so the reason I wanted to run Bone Spear one last time is people were wondering how the next hit delay affected it. And basically the next hit delay nerf, going from 2 to 5, is going to make it go from 2 hitting and 3 hitting mobs to 2 hitting and 1 hitting mobs. So basically, depending on the mob size, the size of their pixel art, if it's a small mob, it'll probably hit once. And then I think even medium mobs, it can hit twice. And then like bosses, it'll hit twice. Basically almost every time, as far as I'm aware of. Because when I was testing it before, it basically always triple hitted the large pixel animations of the bosses. Which is fine, because I think Bone Spear being better single target isn't an issue. And as you can see, I don't think I was really double hitting the infidels. I think you can, like I said, but for mapping, I think it's not going to affect as much as possible as people think. Some people were worried about it. Like it'll probably double hit Siege Beast every time, and that's about it. And who likes to kill Siege Beast anyways? And then somebody else was actually describing what they thought was the optimal way to play Bone Spear Necro now, which is, you know, kind of obvious. Obviously, you want to cast the Bone Spears pretty close to your character. Not right on top of them for most situations. You want to cast the Bone Spear, like, just right off your body. And I think that's the best for sewers specifically. Now, there are places in sewers, like that little section right there, where casting it right on top of myself actually probably was pretty good. But he was saying it's actually very awkward to go from blood warping far away across the screen to casting Bone Spear pretty close to your Necromancer. And I have to agree with him. It is something you have to get really into the flow of doing. But for me to pop in with... Actually, some of the gear is pretty good. Fair enough, right? I've got, you know, 6 sockets on some gear, a 3-socket pretty good circlet, the +1 skill K-Jurgens. Thank you, Cloister, for the gear. It's definitely not the best. And I still was able to do a sub 5-minute sewers because the CTA buffs don't run out by the time I'm done with the map. And obviously doing a sub 5 sewers is like nothing special on most builds. But for how awkward it was and how slow I played some sections just to try to get used to it, I think it's pretty good. So, should you play this version of the build? Let's just answer that real quickly. If you never want to die, then yes, you should play this version of the build. If you want to do maps faster, don't play this version of the build. You lose a lot of damage. Basically, you'd probably max out at like 11k, 12k with this version of the build, and that's like assuming BIS everything. And then with regular Bone Spear, you're hitting like 17k. That's a pretty big difference. Now, there is one caveat to that. If you're just running T1s and certain T1s with low health mobs, and Sewers is pretty good for it, although there's a few chunky guys on this map, namely the Grotesque Worms and the Ghoul Lords are actually pretty tanky too, then 12k is like all you need. Unfortunately, I was at 10k, and yes, on this version of the build, with the amount of plus skills I had, it was much better to run Skillers over Large Charms. I basically gained 1,000 damage doing it. Now, there's probably a point where maybe if I had taken off 2 skillers now and started to mix Mastery LCs, the damage would be a little bit higher. I'm sorry, I forgot to try that. I just basically went full skillers, full LCs, and was like, okay, full skillers is higher. I assumed so. But if you're not worried about damage and you hit a pretty high barrier and you can one-shot every mob in the maps you're farming, then maybe you could consider this or Skull Collector or one of the other amazing defensive options that a Bone Necromancer can use when they don't want to go max damage. But if you want big EP numbers, basically Bone Shade is the way to go. So I didn't really feel like I wanted to test Bone Shade because I wanted to test another variant of Boner Necro and see if I enjoyed playing it this way. Because I know what Running Man will be like. Running Man will be running with the mouse pretty close to your character and bone spearing with the mouse pretty close to your character. And I did enjoy that. I just like Running Man in general. This was actually more fun. I actually thought if I could get into the flow state of moving my mouse close to myself and far away from myself, that's my reaction. I'm like, okay, that was pretty cool. I think Bone Spear's all right. So here's the damage you would need to one-shot mobs on this map. Basically, grotesque worms are never worth one-shotting, but these smaller little mobs you can one-shot easily around 13,000 damage. Anyways, that's it for now, guys. Skelking out. GG.
Come and play with us, Danny. Forever.